Everyone, Jerry from Arena Decklist here, and today we're going to try and break the Great Henge in Pioneer. And Great Henge, reasonable card, has seen play in Standard at the very least. Definitely made an impact at MC7, but Pioneer get to play it alongside Metalwork Colossus, which is kind of a nice combo actually, because this costs 7 and taps for 2. Or, well, this costs 9 and taps for 2 rather, which gets you the 11 for Metalwork Colossus, and then if you have any other non-creature artifact on the battlefield besides the Great Henge, you get to play out a bunch of different Metalwork Colossi, and to help that, we have Sanctum of Ugin, so you will play some amount of big creatures, hopefully reduce the cost of the Great Henge, and then play out the Great Henge, play however many Metalwork Colossuses, triggering as many Sanctum of Ugins as you can, and just end up with a really huge battlefield at the end of it. And even aside from the Metalwork Colossus combo type of stuff, we still have like all these, Llanowar Elves and Elvish Mystics that you can kind of go off with the Great Henge with. So, pretty cool end game that I think is going to be reasonable. And for non-creature artifacts, there's actually like a decent amount of things you can do. Like you can play Witch's Oven alongside Cauldron Familiar and that sort of stuff, and like Witch's Oven by itself helps reduce the Colossus by 1, which is like not a huge deal, but if you have like 2 ovens or oven and something else, then the Colossus start being free alongside the Great Henge. So like that's a reasonable way you could go about things, and Trail of Crumbs and stuff like that. Having all the food around would help with Emery. And then there are things like Golden Egg that you could play too that would help Trail of Crumbs and Emery and Metalwork Colossus. At that point, I had like a little bit more self-mill stuff and some Feasting Troll Kings to also be like another big creature that could come out of the graveyard. And that thing has 7 power, so it reduces the Great Henge. So that take was kind of interesting, but I kept it like sort of bare bones. I just have some Vantress Gargoyles, which people have used alongside Emery a decent amount in Standard. And then Ye Old Lupine Prototype, 2 mana 5/5, basically has no text box, and helps with the Great Henge. So like if you have Vantress Gargoyle or Prototype, the Henge will cost 4. You'll get 2 of that mana back to, cast some Elves, cast a Heart of Kirin, activate Vessel of Nascency, whatever you have going on basically. Maybe just play out another Lupine Prototype, which is kind of a combo, but not really a combo, right? Because if you have Great Henge going, you're probably not going to be Hellbent anytime soon, and the Prototype is basically never going to attack or block. But it does crew vehicles pretty reasonably. So we have Heart of Kirin and Sky Sovereign Console Flagship to also help power out the Metalwork Colossus and make use of our big 2 mana creatures that basically don't do anything, and then some Stubborn Denials to go with them. So that, alongside Emery, is basically the entire main deck. It's just focused on finding the Great Henge, getting this onto the battlefield, and then doing God knows what with it. So I have a lot of blue-green dual lands, some forests to cast our Elves on turn 1, and Sanctum of Ugins, and that's about it. Like, very simple. Like I said, there are a lot of ways that we could take this main deck to go a little bit deeper, and one of the things was even like playing a Hooting Mandrills. I think that was probably the last card that I cut. And you're doing like some amount of self-mill stuff with Vessel and Emery, but Hooting Mandrills, even at 1 mana, doesn't reduce the Henge by all that much. Like, it's still a 5 mana card, which is still a lot, so like you could play it on turn 4 off an Elf or whatever, but I don't know, it just didn't seem that impressive to me. It seemed better to just like play these 2 mana 5 power things, even though they suck, just to kind of power out the Great Henge and everything. So we'll see how this goes. But sideboard, I like the sideboard options that Simic has, and a lot of that is kind of predicated on where the format is now, where things like Aether Gust are not only very good against the green sort of like Devotion or food decks, but it's also good against a wide variety of aggro decks and also some combo decks. So you play against the Lotus Field deck or against Simic Nexus, and Aether Gust is just like a perfectly reasonable disruptive card against them. So you have this card that is very flexible. Obviously, cards like Stubborn Denial, Disdainful Stroke, Negate are all fairly flexible too. And normally in these decks, I would overload kind of on Negate before I would go to Disdainful Stroke because there are enough 3 mana things that I want to counter. But we already have Stubborn Denial doing the Negate thing. So I didn't want there to be stubs and negates. So have some Disdainful Strokes in the mix. Also, a couple copies of Mystical Dispute, which is pretty good again against a wide variety of decks, and certainly having the 1 mana counterspell helps a lot. And then we have some Reclamation Sages, pretty decent. Like Smuggler's Copter being gone, it means that these have lost a lot of utility, but there are still Install Artifact decks. Aetherworks Marvels popping up a little bit more, and you'll find that there are just random artifacts and enchantments around that you want to kill. And I like Sage over something like not Install, Unravel the Ether. Even though Unravel is like slightly better against Soul, because if they turn on their Darksteel Citadel, you get to unravel the Citadel, so they lose a land in addition to the Install, whereas Reclamation Sage, you have to kill the Install, and then if they do something like Skilled Animator on a Darksteel Citadel, well, Reclamation at all, but it is a creature, so you're able to find it with Vessel of Nascency. It is a combo with Great Henge, it helps crew vehicles and whatnot, so I think having the creature is slightly better. And then Ratchet Bomb with Emery is actually quite good against a lot of the different aggro decks, and this is sort of like your Engineered Explosive or whatever, and that's a big deal in the modern Emery decks, but obviously this is a little worse here where we actually have a bunch of 1 mana things ourselves. So I do think that if there's like, the Knights deck, granted they don't have a bunch of 1-drops, like that would be like a 2 mana thing, and we have a bunch of 2 mana things, so it's not perfect. But having this with Emery as sort of like a pseudo lock against a bunch of decks that are trying to put a bunch of small permanents onto the battlefield, I think is really strong. And the other complement to that is Aethersphere Harvester, where this will hold off battlefields where they have like 2, 3, maybe even 4 creatures. But once they start amassing like a bigger battlefield, going a little bit wider, a little bit taller, with all these lieutenants and stuff like that, that's kind of where you need Ratchet Bomb to actually, bring things back down to size. So having the 2, I think, is really nice. But yeah, overall, counterspells and anti-creature cards is kind of what the sideboard is about with Ronin or whatever. So nothing too fancy overall, but we'll see how this version of the deck does. If it does not do well, you see my copy of Henge up here, but I also have a few other Henge decks like looming. So if this one doesn't quite do it, we have a lot of other Henge stuff to fall back on, and you can probably join us tomorrow here on the Arena Decklist channel to see how this deck plays out. And of course, always thanks to Card Hoarder for setting us up with these loan accounts. And if you want to invest in your own loan account and not invest in owning a collection and maintaining that, Card Hoarder are definitely the people to talk to. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.